Hi, and welcome to this edition of Central Focus. We're here with Scott Drummond here to talk about the homecoming weekend. And we'll also be joined by Kelsey Furstenworth later on. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here, Scott.
My pleasure, thank you.
So how exactly are you and your departments involved in planning and organizing Homecoming Week?
Primarily campus activities is involved with the Homecoming Week. Campus Life, of course, and Campus Life being kind of the umbrella group of recreation and the CERC itself and event support services. Everybody is in the picture, you know. So of course recreation does so many different areas throughout that week. We do, of course, we're probably most known out of campus activities for doing the homecoming show on Saturday night. But we also work with other areas throughout campus. So for instance, the CERC is where they host Mr. and Ms. Central out of the RHA group. Friday night, we co-host the dance with RHA, the Berg, and then campus activities. Throughout all that, kind of threaded throughout all of that is the CERC, Campus Life, and event support services. So that's just one small way that we're involved throughout the week. We're involved with the overall planning group for the Homecoming Week campus-wide. So everything from the door contests to the what used to be called Wildcat Alley, which is now the Wildcat Street Fair, during homecoming up outside of Tomlinson. And so we're a part of all those things, but we're also working with a number of different other different departments throughout campus, alumni and development and athletics and residence halls and clubs and organizations.
That's a big mesh. You're in charge of quite a bit, yeah. Well, how far in advance do you have to start preparations for homecoming?
Specifically for the show, we'll start about a year in advance. We'll start working with agencies. We'll start putting together our lists of different acts that we might like to see at Central. We talk to students throughout campus throughout all that time. Even before we've finished the first show, we're already looking toward the next show. And then we also try to work within certain price ranges, and then of course you're trying to find the right person that has that one Saturday in October available a year in advance. Or so.
The big names that you get, it's quite difficult, I can tell.
Sometimes. And then the homecoming events that, this year we actually started about 6 months in advance on all the events. Sometimes we would start as late as summer, which could make it a real tight timeline. So you've got one thing that's happening about a year, and then I've already asked athletics if they can tell me about when next homecoming week will be or weekend will be, so that we can start looking toward that weekend for all of the events, the dance, everything. You
got to start planning out, Now, who is exactly in charge of hiring entertainers, such as Patton Oswalt this last year?
That was me.
That was you? Yeah. Okay. Well, how do you get in touch with Patton Oswalt?
He's a friend, so I call him.
Oh, he's a friend?
No.
Okay.
Actually, we work with one of the main agencies we work with, the Parsons Company, is what's called a middle agent. In some areas they're called middling agents, which I don't like. But anyway, Phyllis Parsons has I would simply put, a lot of inroads throughout the entertainment industry, especially in comedy and concert industries. And so oftentimes other agencies such as William Morris or CAA or ICM or some of those folks will actually contact her with a number of different folks that they have available during certain timelines. And some of those are especially interested in performing at colleges. So we got that call about a year ago or a year before, saying that Patton would like to play some colleges. He'll be available between this date and this date. Can you help set that up? And because we've had that long relationship with Parsons, then we're able to start those conversations early on. So we'd actually had him booked the previous year, but he had to exercise the clause that gets him out, and he took a movie, and so that's when we brought in D.L. Hughley, and Parsons Company helped us book D.L. Hughley.
Well, it's cool you still have him to come back in.
Yeah.
Now, you've had a long past with these event coordinatings, well, your businesses, that ever you've worked. You've worked in a lot of places. I didn't get a chance. Scott actually is the Associate Director of Campus Life and the Director of Campus Activities. But thank you, and I was going to ask you, what this one homecoming event that we have, What makes us so much more unique than other schools, other campuses in Washington State?
The overall homecoming
Yes,
week,
yes.
or that particular event? The
I
whole
would say
week?
the entire week, yes, excuse me.
You know, honestly, in some ways, we're not that terribly different, which is a good thing because it ties us into the tradition of homecoming. I think what makes us pretty unique in a lot of ways is that it's not one of those things that's become, for lack of a better term, institutionalized. There are some campuses that have like virtually a homecoming office. In a lot of campuses, it's very traditionally out of, say, the alumni office or a development group. This one is such a great partnership. There's no real one person or one entity that's totally responsible for homecoming. I'm chair of the committee, but like I said before, there's so many people at that table. Without any one of those folks, we don't have a homecoming week. If we suddenly lost Mr. and Ms. Central, we'd lose a huge tradition. If we don't have Wellington's Wildfire, we've lost what's now become a really huge tradition for us. So it's certainly, of course, and if we don't have the game, Central, the homecoming week is built
around
toward
the game.
that game. So without that, we've lost a lot.
Kind of lost the spirit of homecoming, yeah.
We have in a lot of ways. But the cool thing about this, like you're saying, the spirit of homecoming is it's so many people coming together for that week. So it's going to sound corny, but there's the spirit of homecoming.
It actually kind of ties into the next question I had for you, is how do student clubs get involved in homecoming?
A lot of it is they ask, and we also invite. So for instance, especially events such as, I keep wanting to call it Wildcat Alley, but the street fair, and then of course Wellington's Wildfire. Clubs are a huge component of that. You'll be speaking to her a little later, I understand, but Kelsey Furstenworth, her group is very largely responsible for working with those groups. And then Mary Orthman, who's our student vice president for clubs and organizations. Those two folks especially generate a lot of interest out of our clubs and organizations. This particular BOD has been great at really pulling clubs and orgs into the homecoming week. But thankfully, a lot of people want to be part of that special event, and so they come forward in great numbers.
I remember just yesterday being a freshman and doing the whole Wildcat Welcome Weekend, excuse me, and that was just a blast, and it got the ball rolling real quick. Now, there's a bit of a scare, not much of a scare, excuse me, but there's been wondering about budget cuts, and do you think there might be an effect, will it have an effect on homecoming week?
I think the way I would answer that is it hasn't yet, because we've had these budget cuts. I mean, we've all been facing this everywhere on campus for what, the last 3 years, 4 years.
Ever since I've been here.
Yeah,
it's about 4 years.
So sad to say that has existed for quite some time now. I'm glad to say that so far we haven't lost any steam on homecoming. If anything, homecoming is actually built, and we haven't seen any increase in the budgets for that. What we've seen is just more people willing to step up, and like I said, again, it might sound corny, but that spirit steps forward.
I understand, I believe that.
The BOD saves the general from the salvage yard. They keep that fire truck running. How, I don't know, but they keep that fire truck running, and that's part of what goes on with that, and that's the whole attitude that seems to go all the way through the homecoming piece. Yeah.
Just this year, I actually saw a pamphlet. I can't remember the exact term for it, but it showed all the events happening through homecoming, and it just blew me away because I've lived off campus for a few years now, so I've been a little out of touch. But I've noticed they have like late night zombie runs, games set up for kids, all sorts of stuff going on, and it really kind of overwhelmed me for a second. I didn't realize this was all going on. I would love to partake in it.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, what one event would you have liked to take a part in this last year in homecoming?
Oh, this year, it's kind of strange that you would ask that, because this year I actually got to take part in more aspects of homecoming than I have gotten to in the past. The one thing that I haven't been able to go to over the last about 10 years, I haven't made it to the game, because I'm kind of on call during that time. There's something that we're already either in the midst of planning or we're preparing for that show that night. But this year I was really fortunate. I was able to go to a couple of the reunion events. I actually was able to kind of make it out and about to a lot of different areas of the whole homecoming week. but I still haven't made it to the game in about the last 10 years because I had to make sure that I could answer that phone call for Patton Oswalt's arrival, or, you know, and so on. So
That's really unfortunate. As when you work in the business, that's the problem with it. You're going to miss when you work.
Mm-hmm.
Now I was going to ask you one last question about sports. Have you seen an increase in sports and participation from students during the homecoming weekend? Do you think it really riles them up? Do you see a big attendance increase?
I think in historically, I would say historically, and then what I have been able to kind of piece together, because unfortunately, like I said, I haven't been to a game in a while, but we do see it. It's real fun. I'll track the ticket sales and the ticket pickups through Wildcat Tickets, because of course I'm always tracking the last ticket sales for the show that night. But you can see the game tickets, which include both the student tickets as well as the non-student tickets. And you'll see those numbers. You can just see it all virtually clicking off throughout the day and throughout the week. What I hear is that we see a real substantial increase in our athletic events during that week, and it's because of that whole thing where the students are very charged up about it, because we have created a whole celebratory week out of homecoming.
That's great.
And then the alumni come back and the people come home for homecoming.
I'm glad to see it's making a difference. Thank you so much for being here, Tom.
Oh, my
do
pleasure.
appreciate it.
Thank
Scott,
you.
excuse me.
That's okay.
Scott, thank
That's
you.
okay. I've been called many things.
Hopefully not too bad.
Yeah.
We're going to cut to a quick break, and when we return, we'll be with Kelsey Furstenworth, the Vice President of Student Life and Facilities. Now, please enjoy a highlights reel of all the events that happened during homecoming week. Thank you.